Hey. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Kelsay Books December reading of 2022. I'm Karen Kelsay, and I'm the editor of Kelsay Books. We're really excited for this reading. We've been working for 6 months to get it all together, and we hope you enjoy this lineup of poets that we have. I'd like to acknowledge our team members who are here today. The first one is Julie Kelsay. She's our layout editor.
Hello.
And then we have Jana Sumter. She is the co-editor of The Orchards and also
have everyone here.
Pardon me?
It's great to have everyone here.
And a lot of you know Daylisa. She's our project manager, and she keeps us all in line. She keeps things moving smoothly, and she's really a delight to have on the team. And she's going to introduce the next poets that read to us. Thank you.
It's so nice to see you guys. Our first featured reader today will be Rita Maria Martinez, and her Jane Eyre inspired collection, The Jane and Bertha and Me, was a finalist for the Andre Montoya Poetry Prize and a semi-finalist for the Word Works Washington Prize. Her poetry appears in the Best American Poetry blog, Plowshares, Word Gathering, Swim, and in the textbook, 3 Genres. After Rita, we'll have David Rookberg, John Johnson, and Jeannie Roberts share their poetry with us.
Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here. Thank you to everyone who attended, and thank you to Karen and everyone. So this is, not sure how well you can, it's blurring out a little bit, but the book is called The Jane and Bertha and Me. So I'm going to start off by reading a poem called I Am Thine, Charles Thunder. Charlotte Bronte is the author of Jane Eyre, and she and her sisters wrote pseudonymously under male pseudonyms. So this poem is a little bit about that. I am thine, Charles Thunder, is how Charlotte signs a letter for BFF Ellen Nussey. Slipping into disguise is second nature for CB in 1836, yet there's always a hint of truth surrounding Bronte's mystery men. In Greek, her name means thunder. Charles Thunder is a suave, fast talker, raven hair slicked, decked in requisite Boss or impeccable Armani. I imagine Mr. Thunder is actually Zeus playing hooky among the roulette wheels and neon lights of Vegas, a busty broad dangling from each bicep, blowing on his dice. Thunder, the kind who thinks nothing of leaning over, softly kissing a woman's hand and whispering, your room or mine. So the next poem I'm going to read is it's the title of the book. So it's called The Jane and Bertha in Me. The Jane in me wants to model a black dress, bottle thick lenses, tuck my hair in a bun. The Bertha in me wants to sport a turban, a red nightgown, and chandelier earrings. The Jane in me is suspicious of men flaunting pinky rings, each diamond the size of a chiclet. The Bertha in me believes leathery hands barnacled with gypsy rings are an omen of fertility. The Jane in me sees his meaning in the curve of a nose, the stain of a birthmark on the scalp, interprets the stitch of hair standing to attention on the back of a stranger's head, reads bushy eyebrows, the wide mouth to mean he is stubborn, eats salad with his hands, and continues speaking, regardless of tomato basil soup dribbling down his chin. The Bertha in me sleeps until 3 in the afternoon and sits on the back porch with a cup of Earl Grey that quells the desire to chop up her crotchety landlord. The Bertha in me contemplates the moon, constellations perched on the cusp of night, like hundreds of stretched hands on an assembly line, like synchronized swimmers suspended in mid-stroke, while the Jane in me wants to extract Rochester's teeth with her tweezer man, stow them in a jar, a pillbox, deposit his wrenched incisors and canines into a velvet pouch and pin it to her bra, so she can feel his presence, so she can lay that satchel on her pillow and wake each morning to the prayer of his teeth marks on her pale cheek. So the next poem is for anyone who's experienced any type of loss recently. This is called Postmortem Lament for Charlotte. And there's an epigraph. It mentions Arthur. Arthur was her husband, Arthur Bell Nichols. It's taken from a letter Charlotte wrote to her friend Ellen Nussey in 1854. And it says, Arthur says such letters as mine never ought to be kept. They are dangerous as Lucifer matches. Postmortem lament for Charlotte. You're a commodity now. They will pillage your life. They will raid the closets of your memory, auctioning, trading, and stealing your correspondence for posterity, entertainment, or several £100s. Everyone will know you had the hots for your French teacher because his wife will salvage your ripped scrawl from the trash and stitch the pieces together with cotton and gum. Everyone will get the dish on Daddy's drinking problem. We'll discover your little brother bagged an older babe, a married woman named appropriately enough, Mrs. Robinson. Collectors will covet the grayish black-bordered morning paper you used after Branwell and Emily are interred in the parsonage graveyard and in Scarborough. We'll hunt the 5 fragments scattered across Hoth, Dublin, Texas, New York, and Pennsylvania. Your life smudged by a combination of familiar and foreign fingerprints, riddled with scratches and Ellen's deletions, cutouts. Your dad will become the favored pen pal of enthusiasts, his well-intentioned mutilations resulting in relics, strips of cursive distributed like lotto tickets to faithful Bronteites, fascinated by your small scribble, its looped back D's and sharply angled whitetails now faded to a light brown. Still have time for one more, I'm guessing. Okay. So a while back, a couple of years ago, there was like a slew of these mashup novels like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer. Hello? Oh, so I know that a lot of purists, Jane Eyre purists probably would not read Jane Eyre, but you know, I did. So this poem is called Reading Jane Eyre, and it was a lot of fun to write. Reading Jane Eyre. After reading Jane Eyre, I fell in love with Jane Eyre, the tiny female Van Helsing-like avenger who eradicates unruly members of the undead. A vocation confirmed when John Reed tries to gobble the destitute orphan like a little Debbie snack cake. I admire Jane's ingenuity and foresight, hours employed gathering and sharpening wood, stakes always up her sleeve or stowed beneath her skirt, in case VSP, vampiric sensory perception, kicks in. I admire the quick draw, nimble fingers unsheathing Egyptian daggers, a beloved keepsake from Miss Temple for severing zombie heads, despite the inevitable aftermath of green goo that will coat Jane's pinafore and stockings like nuclear waste. Reader, I found myself rooting for a literary smackdown between the blood-sucking Blanche and the jaguarish Jane, I wanted what countless women have wanted, to cheer and do the wave as Jane drives the stake through her rival's shriveled heart. Miss Ingram, the unrepentant socialite, guilty of precipitating her own demise, of prematurely turning into a pile of dust at Jane's feet. The penalty exacted for chomping on little Adele's thighs like a pair of KFC drumsticks. That one was a lot of fun to write. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Rita Maria. That was really fun. It's nice to know the Bronte sisters are alive and well and in such vivid detail. Thanks also to Karen Kelsay and all the staff at Kelsay Books. They published my book, Where's the River Called Pishon, in 2018. So I'm going to read 3 poems from that. The first is the title poem, refers to the creation story in the Bible, which names 4 rivers: the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. And the Pishon is the only river that's not on any map. Where's the river called Pishon? Who are these people? When did they arrive? Did they come on the same boat as you and I? Did they coalesce from dew and dust, fall as feathers from the sky? How did they learn to pulverize stone, turn it to houses and pavement? When will their longing to conquer relent? When will they come down from their offices, leaving their papers? Why do we recall our dreams years later, if not for our search for a key we lost as children? Or do we carry our only key and dream a door? Why do we fear one stranger but love another, if not for a story woven so tightly in our flesh that forgetting it feels like death? What happened to our plans to lie down in the grass and watch our lost creatures roam darkened skies? Was there a word we spoke or failed to? What was it we tasted when we kissed each other's faces? So the book's in 5 sections. That's from the first section, which is kind of an overture. Then there's a section on the family you're born into. And then the third section is the family you choose. So this is from that. It's called Winter Solstice. You and I are turning the way the seasons turn, with a lag that distance and atmosphere create. There was a time when I shined my light full on you, days drawing on, even as your season turned colder and cold. Now you turn your light on me. The poles are reversed. It may be that I follow a northern star and you some southern cross. Once it was enough that we turned our lamps toward the same heavens. That's kind of a sad poem, but that's okay. Everything's better now. The last poem is The Poplars of August, which I suppose is a poem about poetry or maybe consciousness. I say this, but it's not me saying it. I'm a two-way mirror looking in on a room, the width of a hand stretched temple to temple. Inside the room, houses and people wink open and closed. Trees wave like trees, and the earth moves in big circles. And these things I tell you about myself, all lies. I drink to remember, and all I remember is the past. Meanwhile, the present. If only I could remember the present. If only I had some kind of a map or a glassblower's rod to grapple this light, then I could tell you something. I mean, meanwhile, the poplars of August persist, and the slippery glass I lean into, and the imprint of my hand, and its valleys and signs. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Johnson. This is my new chapbook, In the Mind of the Anxious Traveler. Thank you to everyone at Kelsay Books for all the support. And this is really based on my experiences being afraid to travel for a long time and sort of what I learned through the years. And these are not everything in the book, but everything I'm going to read today are all Seussian sonnets. So the first poem that I'd like to share with you is called Greyhound Love. A blind busker screeches his violin into the bitter cold air. Exhaust fumes turn snowflakes dirty brown before they hit the frozen ground. In my goose-down jacket, this love-struck kid searches for the bus station. A woman in a torn trench coat claims to be Gloria Vanderbilt. 3 cops walk past me with a look that suggests, "You don't belong here, kid." But our love has no bounds. Finally, having found my destination, the rotating board in the Greyhound bus station clicks as I follow her journey from Binghamton to Ithaca to Geneva and soon to Rochester. Underneath my jacket and grasped by leather gloves are some dime store roses. Anticipation builds as the large bus pulls up. I make eye contact with her in the front seat, but the driver disrupts our hallmark moment as the giant bus wheel almost squashes my foot. But then she is my arms, her red turtleneck and black gloves. We kiss. The heat in a lusty dorm room will warm us when we get to campus. Second poem I'd like to share is Butt Cheeks in Tokyo. 2 jet-lagged tourists observe a spectacle they don't quite understand. Juxtapose scantily clad plus-size warriors with butt cheeks exposed. Next to silk-adorned, fan-waving gojis enforcing the ancient rules, ringside chimpans directionally seated to the east, west, and north. Purification and preparation soberly executed. The sacred rope-edged mud circle refreshed with a steel watering can. Ceremonial salt cleanses evil spirits to erase the past. Elaborate acrobatic rituals performed before the battle. Large men raise their legs in the air, looking like dancers in a ballet. Slapping their girth creates a guttural echo foreshadowing the fleshy demolition derby of rubber skin, not twisted metal. With a bow and a wave, the niceties conclude and the battle begins. A fast sidestep and a push, and the giant tumbles headfirst to the floor. The loud silence of the hall only disturbed by 2 men cheering. And the last poem I'll share is one called Hotel Kleptomaniac. 3 lime-seasoned soap bars wrapped in olive tissue, the gateway drug. Moisturized hands swipe lotion imbued with fake pine and yingling. Foil packets of cheap coffee taste much better in waxy paper cups. Stirring a religious awakening, he takes the Gideon Bible. Thou shalt not steal does not apply to his free samples. For this frequent traveler, free breakfast and a free drink at the bar. Rubbery buffet eggs can't be swiped, but tiny jars of jelly can. The 14th consecutive week on the road, stealing time from home life. Sun sets in whatever random city as he plops down at the bar. He orders the most expensive scotch on the rocks. It's free after all. A red-headed lady approaches, sipping an apple martini. She rubs against his moisturized hands, sliding him her room key freely. He responds, emptying his pockets, offering her ketchup and butter. Thou shalt not commit adultery, a commandment he will not break. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, hopefully? I'm Jeannie Roberts, and this is the cover of my newest collection. It's titled The Ethereal Effect, a collection of villanelles, and it contains 31 villanelles of various topics. And as we all know, a villanelle is a form poem containing 19 lines, where the first and third lines of the first stanza alternate throughout the piece. And with that, there's a lot of repetition, obviously, and musicality. I have 3 villanelles I'd like to read. And the first one is titled, Recall the Milkweed. Where Timothy lifts and trifolium spills, the grasslands ripple as dragonflies dart. Recall the milkweed where the monarch thrills. Here solace grows near the moss-laden rills. Harmony flows, extends light, allays dark. Where Timothy lifts and trifolium spills, the hermit thrush sings, its silver bell trills. The field exalts where the meadow meets lark. Recall the milkweed where the monarch thrills. Smooth asters cluster in ray floret frills. Lushness radiates like Claude Monet's art, where Timothy lifts and trifolium spills. The pastures in rapture, as do the hills. Like balm, Mother Nature soothes weary hearts. Recall the milkweed where the monarch thrills. Our planet's fraught with humanity's ills. Still, health will return when we do our part. Where Timothy lifts and trifolium spills. Recall the milkweed where the monarch thrills. My second selection is titled Water. It animates life wherever it flows. And this one was inspired by a photograph. It animates life wherever it flows, is home to frogs, a habitat for fish, dihydrogen monoxide, H2O. The body requires its presence to grow, as if an elixir or assured wish. It animates life wherever it flows. Internally drenched, awash head to toe, humans are vessels, a natural dish of dihydrogen monoxide, H2O. It entertains swimmers, those on the go, quenches our thirst, bedews as if kiss. It animates life wherever it flows. It is vital to wren, robin, and crow, weeps for protection, a helping hands list. Dihydrogen monoxide, H2O. Let us leap into action, steal the show. Be atoms, ale aids, guardians of bliss. It animates life wherever it flows. Dihydrogen monoxide, H2O. My last selection is titled, it's here, okay, is titled In Praise of Our Pets, and it's a tribute to our furry friends. Canine or feline, their love builds rapport. Animal kinship grants comfort and ease. Well-being exists when pets pad the floor. Loyalty breathes where our fur angels snore like blossoms in springtime and ocean breeze. Canine or feline, their love builds rapport. As if lifeboats, they bestow calming shores. Great Dane or Tabby, no matter the breed, well-being exists when pets pad the floor. Boxer or Sphinx, their hearts open doors. As if vital balm, they soothe human need. Canine or feline, their love builds rapport. Kindness exists, precious metals. Kindness exceeds precious metals and ores. Friendship abounds with a Max or Maltese. Well-being exists when pets pad the floor. Praise the collective, the four-legged core. Life becomes sweet with a pug or Burmese. Canine or feline, their love builds rapport. Well-being exists when pets pad the floor. Thank you for listening.
I was so wrapped up in those thoughts there that I forgot that I'm next. Thank you so much for those sharing that wonderful poetry. Our next featured reader is Luke Stromberg. He is the author of The Elephant's Mouth that Kelsay Books published in 2022. His poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Literary Matters, Smartest Pace, the Hopkins Review, the New Criterion, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Think Journal, the Raintown Review, and elsewhere. Luke serves as the associate poetry editor for eVerse Radio, and for many years he was also involved in organizing the Westchester University Poetry Conference, which is now the Westchester University Poetry and Creative Arts Festival. He works as an adjunct English instructor at Eastern University and St. Joseph's University. After Luke, we will hear from another guest reader, Jennifer Freed, and then Carolyn Clark. Luke.
Well, thank you, Daylisa and Karen and everybody from Kelsay Books. My book, The Elephant's Mouth, just came out this this fall. Here's the cover here. I'll read a few poems from the book. The first one I'm going to read is actually the first poem in the collection. It's called The Mugging. I had the muzzle of a gun or something pressed into the small of my back. Your wallet, a voice demanded, dry, succinct, like breathing in my naked ear unasked. A secret. As much as the gun, the robbery, his lifting out my wallet himself from my back pocket, his hand's invasion was what was violating. After, the thought of that's what made me vomit. My private world lost its private affect. Now, even sitting in my kitchen alone, I fear I cannot live my life apart. For weeks, when walking from the L to home, I felt the condensation of his breath against my ear and the newly pregnant dark. So their poem is called On Not Attending Church, which is not an anti-church poem, really. Well, you'll see. On not attending church. Church, I'm sad to say, is boring. I can admit it now. All that up and down for listless singing over blaring organ music, the pastor straining at the pulpit. It feels a little less than sacred. We sat up in the balcony, my family and I, in a row of aluminum folding chairs most Sundays of my younger years. I felt a sense of duty then that lingers as a guilty feeling when I sleep until 11 on Sunday mornings now. I'll still show up for Christmas Eve or Easter to stick a 20 in the plate and wonder why God's famous grace hasn't swelled my meager heart, but I stay greedy with my life. I asked my dad one time, as he stood shaving by the bathroom mirror, what heaven would be like. He stirred his razor in murky water and told me, no one really knows, son, but we'll all be together there. You, me, your mom, your brothers, and we'll rejoice and praise God's name forever, knowing that he loves us all. Doesn't that sound wonderful? It sounded a lot like church to me. I pictured the saints in folding chairs or crowding wooden pews, a service lasting an eternity without a cookout to look forward to, and tried to hide my disappointment, my feeling that there must be more. I've always wanted something more, from church, from work, from love. Too often my life resembles a tasteless meal. I pick away feeling bored, pretending that I'm satisfied, and leave the table hungry still. But surely it's better to go to church than watch the Sunday shows. Who knows? The hound of heaven may catch me yet. I read red-lettered text with longing, hoping that it finally will. Meanwhile, the boring churches wait. So this next poem is called The Chimes at Midnight, and it references, alludes to Shakespeare's Henry IV plays, particularly the relationship between Falstaff and Hal, who go on to become Henry V. So it's dedicated to my cousin, Leo James Stromberg. It's called The Chimes at Midnight. You ranted, you raved, you handled life too rough. Bartenders' eyes would glare with homicide. All right, they'd say, I think you've had enough. Thrown out of every bar you stepped inside and taunted, mocked, subdued by burly cops. You couldn't rouse this fallen world to listen. But like an express train blowing past your stops, you raged, intent upon a holy mission. In record shops or diners, you testify haired, a Viking raider out of central casting, the thunderbolt scar on your forehead flared when you would get yourself into a passion. The Lord would rather us be poor than slaves to things, you'd roar. Resist the alarm clock crowd. Their fancy homes, their boats, their cars were graves. The well-heeled in the churches were all too proud. We fought, we laughed, we stupefied ourselves with endless tokes and talked delicious nonsense, while Neil Young's high and plaintive voice wove spells. Back then, I was still in my innocence and half believed that it was possible to live exempt forever. I was wrong. I found a job and married as people will. You're 6 years gone. It doesn't feel that long. You were a nut, but ah, the nights we had. Yes, we heard the chimes at midnight, my friend. Another round, our motto, for good or bad, and drank as if the night would never end. So this is the title poem of the book. It's called The Elephant's Mouth. What's it take to join the circus? My father asked. A gang of workers were putting up a tent, big hammers ringing on the pegs in rhythm. I'm thinking that I'd like to join up with you guys. This was 45 or thereabout, I'd guess, when the circus used to come to town each year. My father was just a boy then, 8 or 9. Their train would rumble past his house on Guilford Road. Well, to join the circus, one offered, you gotta be brave. He leaned on his hammer and mopped his brow with his shirt. Are you brave, kid? He asked, praising my father, who, conscious of the chuckling men, answered, I'm brave. Enough to stick your head up in an elephant's mouth? The workers gathered, happy for a break. I ain't afraid, he said, a bit less certain. Well, come on then. I know just the elephant. The animal was penned up in a tent nearby. Pulling back the flap, the man said, You're sure? I'm sure, my father said, not sure at all. Not when he saw it stamp its mud-splattered feet. Held by his knees, my father was raised up to its mouth, and he did it, stuck his head inside, to the delight of all the roaring men. Then eyes shut tight, pulled free, his bravery made clear. Whatever my father felt inside that creature's mouth, I'll never know. I've looked at elephants chewing grass or slack-jawed and reposed and wondered, is it hot in there? Do they have teeth? My eyes were closed, my father says. I can't remember. I try to place myself within that tent. You weren't even thought of then, he laughs. I was a different person. So much has happened since. He thinks they said that he should come back when he was older, that he was grade A circus material, and gave him passes to the show that night, which must have been at least a little disappointing. How does a kid go back to St. Cyril's after that? Desk of unworldly children blotting ink, a sister with her yardstick in the aisle, the wide blackboard that seemed to bar the way to fun. Within a few brief days, the tents were all brought down, and then the neighborhood was taken back by normal people and their normal task. No snakeskin man walked to the corner store for smokes. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do was to let go of my belief, long held, that I was set apart for something special, blessed by distinction, like a high-wire trapeze artist. And to be honest, I'm not sure I have let go. The illustrated woman haunts my nights with promises of some lost and unclaimed life. I have to will myself to go to work each day. But sometime in his 20s, my father married my mother. He sold his red hot rod convertible and then acquired a mortgage and raised 5 boys. For 30 some odd years, he worked for the school district. Today, my father lives just blocks from Guilford Road. No tent has gone up in the field for decades. The train line that ran through is long since gone, and he hardly can remember that elephant at all. Thank you.
Thank you for those wonderful poems. And thank you, Karen and Delisa and everyone else at Kelsay for putting this program together. It's nice to see so many in attendance. The book I'm going to read from is called When Light Shifts. And it came out in March of this year, and it's about the aftermath of my mother surviving a cerebral hemorrhage. The poem I'm going to read is called Unfiltered Light, and it takes place about 3 weeks after my mother's stroke, when she was in the rehab hospital, before she really understood how severely damaged her brain was. But after she was able to finish a sentence and stay awake for more than half an hour. It's called Unfiltered Light. In the sunlit exercise room, my mother sits beside a balding, bearded man in a motorcycle jacket to practice clipping clothespins to a paper cup. Across the square table, a rapidly blinking teen and a woman with deep wrinkles and purple hair. They work in heavy silence. The therapist encourages them to use just one hand. Don't forget, this is healing not just your body, but your brain. She passes out putty, demonstrates how to gather it into a ball, then flatten it with only the fingers. Motorcycle man keeps dropping his putty. The blinking boy breathes heavily. The purple-haired woman bites her lip, slows, revives when the daughter sitting behind her pats a shoulder, whispers in her ear. My father holds my mother's right hand to keep her from using it. His eyes won't stay open. His body sags sidewise. My mother tells him it's time for his nap, looks for his hat. Before he can step away, she reaches up from her wheelchair to tug at his scarf. Come here, you. Don't go without a proper goodbye. They kiss. Light touches the whole table. Everyone blinks as my father straightens and my mother beams and my father smiles and my mother teases. Do I know you? I sure hope so. If I don't, I want to. I should say that at the time of this, my mother was 81 and my father was 92. And I think I'm supposed to be done now, so.
You have a couple more minutes if you'd like to share another poem.
Oh, great, okay. I'll read another poem. It's a little later in the book. It's called Mystery, a Question. If anybody knows anyone who has suffered a brain injury, you know how strange it can be because they're so changed. This poem has a lot of incomplete sentences. Mystery, a question. My mother, but not my mother. Her heart, her drive, her wit, and yet what she says when, or what she doesn't seem to, the way her smile, the set of her jaw, the timbre of her voice. So much sorrow. I hold her close. If I can name what I miss, will I know where to look, how to find it in her? And I think maybe I have time for one more. That my time was written wrong. It was written from 1:45 to 1:50. So I'm not quite sure when I should end, but maybe I
Two
can
more
just.
minutes.
Okay,
for
so
it.
thank you. So I'll read one. It's called What Then? And again, it's about my mother coming to terms with brain damage and the extent of the damage. What then? Ship of bone and breath and flesh, but what when the mast bends like rubber, when the rudder floats away, when the wheel spins loose as a toy? What when the mind thinks walk, and the foot you feel moving exactly as it used to is, in fact, dragging, the floor rising again to greet your waving palms? What do you make of yourself then, when the body, your own body, ceases to be the vessel of your intentions, becomes instead your anchor? Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to take a 10-minute break and come back around 2 or the hour, whatever it is for your time zone.
Trying to keep up with you. I'm on the road and I'm leaning on a shopping cart right now in a New Jersey mall. So I feel like a bag lady. My book is poetry that was called Poet Duet. Kelsay Books, published just before the pandemic. My mother, Florence Clark, was a poet. So together we made this book, and she's not here in body. She passed in 2020, but I have a poem from her, and then each one of these are common threads for 50 years of poems. So here I'll start with hers. Florence. Some days, this is for poetry, it's called, some days I wear you like a sash tied across my chest. When I run, you loosen, swing back and forth, almost untie yourself, escape. Other days, you're sunflowers, multiple, bright. Then I stumble, dazed, see my reason rushing by, almost crazed. How many lives I've found in you and lost. My fingers ache. Could you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hope so. Okay. So this is really live coming from New Jersey. Like I totally feel the poems immediacy, if you will. The next two poems I'll read, they're a little bit sadder, but very clear. Just 1 second while I find this here. So yeah, so here's the one I want you to hear. My mother and I wrote at separate times and never shared our work, but it goes like this. Mine is 1986, Alpha. Pouring up fragments stolen from Psyche's table. I'm able to survive, ambrosia-lipped, forever stillborn. Real gods don't bleed, so the Greeks believed. Ichor enshrines their veins. My own arterial heroes hide in swift mercurial dreams. Hermes two-way mirrored moved, waiting from my mind, entering death's threshold, repaying me in kind. A dream wedged between two eyelids might well reveal the trembling blade. His message crossed this Lehman, and now I live in shade. It was a time of darkness for me at that time, 1986. My mother visited me at a restaurant and she must have picked up on my vibe because years later I found this poem, Persephone at the Restaurant. Winter shadows our talk, the snow keeps falling and I drift, see sadness approaching, turning the corner, dragging a sack of depression. Poor old rag woman, lost and strange. Blinking at your brightness, I close my eyes, wish, try to blow out my madness, my longing to dance, to flatten myself against you and fatten like a snowflake on one brief chance. Words are too much. You look away, gaze, come back to me, rest. My daughter, Persephone, trapped in your dark maze, cold as that green vase placed between us, shaped its own emptiness. Those were sad times, but we were able to meet at a restaurant, and that's what came of it. I do have to say the last poem, if I have a minute to share one more pair, is that okay, Karen? I have a minute to share the pair of a short couple of happier poems, and that will be it. So one is called Sitting Outside After the Heat Wave, and I wish I had a little heat here, but I don't. This is my mother's poem from 2012. All I need are those butterflies and this breeze. The morning offers both and a poem. The drone of a plane fades away. I love the silence. The blue sky waits for prayer. And then this is my last one called Stopping to Breathe, written in 2002, 10 years before. Stopping to breathe, you envelop me in your breath. I am your watermark, thin as paper, sheer as onion skin, two-faced yet legible as Janus guarding the bridge. Poems spring from silence and little noises that stretch time. Afternoon bird song, the purr of a light plane imagined beyond pleated white blinds make me think it must be a blue sky. My daughter completed for me the art of butterfly kisses that I now pass on to you. When, like trees, we disentangle to grow our separate ways, remember these silences timbered in peace and desire. Thank you for listening. I'm glad I fit in. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
I'm excited to introduce our next group of readers. Michael Milligan will start us off, And then Jacqueline Jules will be our next reader, followed by Daniel Lusk and Angela Patton.
This is my book, Unless I Came Back to Tell You. I am Michael Milligan. So there are a lot of repetitions with falling and water. I'm just going to read 2 poems. Falling in Amber. This is for Gertrude Halstead. She was 83 when she took this fall. You fell, yet in me something shattered, at least shook. Hard to say why or what moved as a cat moves to a new place in the room, since I noticed only days later my own lingering discomfort, not apparent like the bruises on your hips or the knot on the back of your head, yet increasingly insistent. Not like the cat either, after all, since the sleek queen of the house moves only to find a more comfortable place to sleep. So not like the cat, no. More like waking from a dream with a lover, to find myself alone in the night. I wished to reach out and save you as I saw your tumble begin, but looked only into eyes unhinged by imbalance, as far from you as if the stretch of room between us were lucid but impervious glass. I was held fast while you fell with certainty. Or not glass, but imprisoned in amber, a chunk so large it filled the room. I, a dark insect, watching through orange haze. Space and time dense enough to stop even a cat in her ethereal tracks. 10 linear feet of floor stopped me dead. But you were graceful, even in collapse, moving fluidly through a murk of sedimentary history I thought at first must be yours. On later meditation, my own immobility is what I saw, disturbed by recollections of my dive downstairs at age 5, hitting my eye on the jamb at the inevitable bottom. From that moment, I was unsure of my poise. I sit awake tonight watching the cat loll on the couch, cat unblinking, find I cannot untangle falling from falling, and thrust into a personal vacuum, punctured only by short respites in which to consider air, a semi-precious gem, yet light, yet empty. And this poem is, the first line is also the title, so I'll just read right into it. You can see how the waves roll in and out, but the shore remains intact, essentially unchanged. Or how a seed opens and the shoot pushes up while the root thrusts down, a horizon of sun above, mineral and water below. Argue if you must how the shore manifests instability, how grains of sand are swept off the beach and cast into new maps, or how canopy shades the smaller tree to death while roots crack the mortar of a house. Cry out what you imagine the heart of the world to be. What solace in the harsh knowing all you love will perish? Sunrises, sunsets. If you think of a great circle, you're partly right. Consider center and radius, not circumference. Consider containment. You choose the weight of stone in your belly when you could be a feather. In the end, none of this matters. As you fall or fly, remember the way of the sea. To surge is to recede, is to surge, is to recede. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Jules, and I will be reading from Manna in the Morning, which is a book of biblically inspired poems, and I will read 4 short poems from the collection. This is the first one in the book. Biblical Lives. Jacob stole his brother's birthright. Moses murdered an Egyptian. David seduced another man's wife. The Bible elevates lives marked by more than merit. Yet, unlike Twitter, the Bible doesn't cancel characters. We are told to read beyond the transgression, consider the whole saga. To remember the Israelites were not abandoned after the golden calf, and each one of us is Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, more complex than our worst moments or our best. The city of Sodom. Abraham was not Noah, content to save his family while everyone else drowned. Abraham argued for Sodom. Is this justice from the judge of the world, that the righteous be dealt the same blow as the guilty? Abraham bargained. Will you save Sodom for 50 innocent lives? What about 45, 40, 30, 20, 15? In the end, they settled. 10 decent souls could save an entire city. And Sodom was lacking even that. A fact to remember the next time I question if the compassion of one person counts. We want to know why. Like the animals in Noah's Ark, everything walks by its mate. There is no light without dark. No large without small, a front and a back to everything. Hard, soft, hot, cold, healthy, sick. Still, we want to know why. Up is defined by down. Joy sits on a seesaw with grief. We are Moses on the mountain, begging to behold a presence, allowed only a glimpse as we cower in the cleft of a rock. Humbled, we climb down, stone tablets clutch to our chest, lay them tenderly in the tabernacle, to carry on weary shoulders through years in the wilderness, always pining for the divine face we won't be permitted to see. And my last poem, wherever you go, I will go. Seeing the words alone, you might think they were spoken by a woman sacrificing her needs to follow a man. Instead, Ruth's pledge to Naomi proclaimed a bond between two women, navigating a world where widows survived on leftover grain and the kindness of kinsmen. Much is made of Ruth's marriage to Boaz, how a faithful convert declared, "Your people will be my people," and became the great-grandmother of David, the king, line of the Messiah. May we not forget how the story began with two homeless, grief-stricken women supporting each other through hard times. Thank you. My book is The Manna in the Morning. And thanks so much to Kelsay Books and everyone for this reading.
I'm Daniel Lusk, and this is Every Slow Thing. I'll read just a couple of poems. This one, Night Walking, begins with an epigraph, a sentence from a French chef, André Saltner, his advice on salt béarnaise, where whatever you would put in, you would take out, leaving only the residue of taste. I thought that was a good strategy for a poem as well. Night walking. The woman in my dream led night walking and spoke in tongues, said the caliph's assassins were turned into owls, said the Pelican Nebula is composed of ink, enough to write until the end of time, said a dust pillar at the rim of Carina Nebula resembles a man fleeing a burning house, said morning's children would awake to clouds of curds and whey, and the knowledge that our sun is just a garden variety star. And I woke to the white eyes of shadowy deer, bedded down on snow at the edge of the woods, and saw they were ghosts of ourselves asleep in the moon-moored house. Standing barefoot at the window, I heard the confessions of owls and other ghosts, hum of trucks on the distant wire of the highway, sighs of a midnight train racing its shadow on the river. And this one, as beauty does. Who would not love the painter's model, her mouth on canvas bleeding from a kiss? The cat's paw birthmark on bold Samantha's thigh, made famous by the coming in of miniskirts. The sleepwalker, naked about the neighborhood, but for morning fog. Or Nurse Pushkin, eyelids fluttering, asleep beside me just before her apartment fire. I've known beauty and know beauty still. Thank you for including me, Karen.
So I think I'm up next. Hi, I'm Angela Patton, and this is my book, The Oriole and the Ovenbird. Came out last year in January. And I'd like to read one longish poem called Hill Walking, Glencolmkill, County Donegal. This came from a visit I made to Glencolmkill when I attended an Irish language school there. It's a very remote place, and it's called after St. Colmkill, who is given credit or perhaps blame for bringing Christianity to Scotland, depending on your perspective. It's called Hill Walking, Glencolmkill, County Donegal. A strip of grass running down the middle of the road tells how rarely a car appears. Sheep grazed unfenced everywhere, raising their white startled faces at sound of a hill walker's jaunty whistle. Yesterday, a man with a flat slane came to slice and stack the sods of turf into teepees for the wind to dry, as though he were setting a fire in his cottage hearth at home. Now the turf has shed its brackish liquid, and each damp lump leans against its neighbor, like all the little houses standing shoulder to shoulder in the glen. We can see their lights come on when the long summer evening dwindles, and we turn aside from our hill walking to take in the view. It is said that years ago, the locals were wary of newfangled electricity until a priest, still venerated in these parts, persuaded them it was a gift from God. He led them on a journey through the village, a rushlight held aloft like a monstrance, his black cassock billowing behind. By sleight of hand, exchanged the rushes for a candle, then a lighted torch, and finally an oil lamp. At last, by prearrangement, a hidden acolyte depressed a switch, and lo, electric light eradicated darkness. The oldest woman in the parish, acknowledging celestial stagecraft, gave the experiment her blessing. Looking out beyond the cliffs to the wild Atlantic, and beyond that to the rim of the world, you wonder what might have moved that madman missionary, Columkill, to set out to sea in a wooden curragh. Did he wish himself a dove that could fly above the waves, bearing the lighted match of faith in his beak to set the distant lands on fire? And what still moves his followers to wander in his footsteps, muttering Hail Marys as they kneel before the numbered signs to tick off each station on their pilgrimage? Still, remnants of a prehistoric past endure, whose rocks and wells and sacred stones were worshipped long before the Christians plastered over it with saints and statues. Up here on the mountain, there is only wind that blows all voices, ancient, modern, out to sea, where fulmars, gulls, and gannets do not believe in any god but hunger. Thank you so much.
Those were beautiful. Our next featured reader is Yasmin Miriam Cloth. Yasmin Miriam Cloth. She is a poet and writer in Cincinnati, Ohio. Her writing often scratches at the surface of love, loss, place, and space, with a focus on exploring her Middle Eastern heritage. Her writing has appeared in various outlets, including the LA Times. Ancestry Unfinished is her debut collection. Our guest readers following Yasmin are Jean Twaranite, Lee Woodman, Lois Romadili, and Arnie Johnston.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Delisa, for that introduction, and Karen, for the invitation to be here today and to hear all of your amazing voices. This is such a talented group of poets. This is my debut collection, Ancestry Unfinished, Poems of a Lost Generation. It might be backwards here on the video. And it's really a collection at an intersection of my family history and my Middle Eastern heritage. My parents came to the US and Canada in the late 1970s from Cairo, Egypt, and I was born here in the States. And so this collection very much explores their stories and family stories, and it's told across generations. So there's 3 chapters, grandmothers, mothers, and daughters. And each of the poems is really a story that sits somewhere in one of these generations. So the first poem I'm going to read comes from the section on grandmothers. It is, I think, as much about my maternal grandmother's grape leaves as it is a story of grief and loss. And this is hand-rolled wisdom. My grandmother's grape leaves are the only ones I'll eat. She'll pull them like tissue paper from an oily jar, take her mottled hand to wild leaves, from vines, from trees, a plastic bag of yellow veins, crisp in the sun. My grandmother's grape leaves are made in many parts, 3 days, 1 night. The night my mother died, a family friend made Persian food we ate in silence in a sterile room. There were no grape leaves, but tahdig, rice burned orange, burned turmeric and saffron, burned broken grains on my hospital plate. My grandmother's grape leaves are first washed, cut, dried, leaves stretched wide on the counter, open mouths waiting to be stuffed. My grandmother rolls her grape leaves by hand, rolls grape leaves while watching Days of Our Lives, rolls grape leaves into thin bodies, don't bulge or break. She tolerates my time in the kitchen, winces when I under stuff, and holds my hands in the way she held my mother's that day, that is to say, gently. My grandmother's grape leaves are the only ones I'll eat, leaves from vines she picked the day before, wise to rain and time and our quiet lives. So the second poem I'd like to read continues to, it pulls on the thread of loss, but it carries with it this theme of the senses. So there's the sense of taste from food. There's also the sense of smell and how that roots in memory and how that places you back in a particular place and time. And so this next poem is called Jasmine Flower. I never asked my mother for the list she made of other names I could have been the day I was born. I knew the one she gave me was the only one she loved. Name I bent into a boomerang so it never quite sounded like its Arabic origin, so I could blend in my American schools the way a bird will press brown feathers against the grass, become the grass, even though I hungered for the way my family pronounced my name, the S in the middle, long and soft, a song, a lost note, a scent I knew once on my mother's skin, leftover garlic and salt, leftovers of the person I was. My mother named me a small white-petaled flower. When she would stumble on this plant in the store or the street, she'd announce in her tilted accent, Allah, with her nose buried deep in green leaves, as if she had seen me that day for the very first time. And I think the last poem I'd like to read, it continues on this journey through the senses. This one, still the sense of smell with food, but also the very palpable sense of touch in this memory of the first time I walked through my parents' neighborhood in Cairo. And it is titled Silver Plated. The summer my daughter turned 5, she learned how to swim. She took big breaths between breaks in her stroke. Her hands cupped the water and legs kicked up white froth. Each year she grows like a wildflower, taller. Each year more words attach themselves to her sentences, pulls her into a current further from her heritage. I know she won't know the silver-sided leaves that grow on bushes found on an island in the Nile. My mother showed me how to press the leaf in a heavy book, and in time, the silver would shine like coins in the sun. I cannot replicate my upbringing for my little girl. There is no cut and paste. I don't speak my parents' language or know the songs from over there. I do not carry the recipes in my hands, phyllo dough wrapped pastries, rolled leaves, grape and cabbage, kofta flat in its tray, cut in diagonal lines. The smells that stay with my daughter will not be the same ones that have stayed with me. Sumac, cumin, mint, garlic. I dream of these smells mixed with my mother's scent. I don't know the name for the silver-sided leaf. It grows sideways from bushes bordering broken sidewalks in a blistering Cairene sun. When my mother took me on walks through her old neighborhood, she counted sightings by touch of her favorite leaf. You can only see the silver, she said. If you peel the green away, bend it from the branch, and press its body for years in a place away from the sun. Thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gene Twarnite, and I'm coming to you from sunny Tucson, where we don't have to worry about the snow. And first of all, I'd like to thank Karen for inviting me here today, and to all of you for all your lovely poems. I've been really enjoying this, and thank you to the staff of Kelsay Books for making this publishing such an enjoyable experience. This first poem is from my fourth Kelsay Books collection, Shopping Cart Dreams. And I dedicate this poem to all my fellow poets out there. The poet's job. Watch through the window to right of things in plain view, like the lone black thong flapping defiantly in a sea of white reefs. Listen to the soft tickety sounds an empty wrapper makes, skimming along the sidewalk, and find there a symphony. Turn everything into something else. Make the words go incognito until their true identities are revealed. Explore dark ovens and castles of abuse where muses often lurk. Feel the earth quaking and bear witness. Express the ineffable with disappearing ink. Start with one word and sail the world. Mourn the spaces left behind when there are no words. This next poem is from my second collection, The Museum of Unwearable Shoes. And I read a quote somewhere by the poet Ray Armantrout. She said that the sight of emptiness makes us uncomfortable. So I wrote this sonnet. Whenever I see empty. Whenever I see empty, I seek to fill it, whether it needs filling or not, inserting my vanity into spaces undefiled by actuality, as if I could fill the vacuum between the stars and electrons, as if I could fill the gulf between us, no matter how close you seem. As if I could fill your vacant stare so you don't have to be there alone. As if I could fill all the holes and lonely places within me. As if I could fill the blank slate with words enough to keep the void at bay. And I'd just like to end up with one short poem. And this is from my very first Kelsay Books collection, Trash Picker on Mars. And for some reason, I've been sharing this poem a lot lately at readings. Better to own a house. It's my body, you say, but not if you're a woman. It's not like property. There you have real rights, possession, exclusion, disposition, enjoyment. With a house, you get to decide who can enter and who can stay. With your body, men have all the keys. They'll open your vagina and lock up your womb. They'll cover your body with a tent to resist temptation, then cut your clitoris to rob you of pleasure. You can sell a house, but not your body. For that, you need a pimp. He'll work you till you bleed and keep all the profit. Better to own a house than a body. Thanks, everyone.
I'm Lee Woodman, and my Kelsay Books is Lifescapes. Looking backwards, I'm sorry about that. My collection is about separation and divorce during COVID. And the first poem is about a new relationship. Vermilion suit. Friday night, tired, drifting. I almost did not pick up. Your voice, very purposeful. Hello? You answered my ad. Pediatrician, passion for the arts. The conversation rising, we settled on a meeting at the plaza the following Monday. How will I know you? My vermilion suit, I answered. He had to say yes, whether he knew it was a color or not. A tiny corner nook, upscale bar, 2 glasses of Pinot Grigio, teeny dish of salty cashews. First impressions crossed our foreheads, questions circled our ears. You were reading Amitav Ghosh. I grew up in Bangalore. You were fond of museums. I worked at the Met. Why I dared accept a ride, I do not know. You dropped me off, suggesting that you'd enjoy doing something cultural, which sounded vaguely sexual. We went to the Guggenheim. Each anniversary, we always arrived separately, strangely nervous. 7 p.m., October 18th, same hotel for 20 years, still vermilion, still wondering, will I know you? The second poem is about a terrible accident. It was different than fainting, inspired by C.D. Wright. It's not what you imagine, how darkness covers. You can't know, can you? You pay attention to something else, then it happens while you're watching. A moment before concussion, total concentration on a task, a careful task, the grasping for a grandchild's hand, you step from the tub. Resounding thud, head to ledge, lower teeth rattle. You search for sight, yet only hear the child singing. Oh, athlete, no longer will you be sure-footed on the track. No more will you take 2 steps at a time. Between composing countless stanzas, you left the web of family. Blackness drove the lights out. You must know it could happen. Flash of a second, the before, the after of forever. The third is Zodiac, using the use of metaphor of astrophysics. So it's called Zodiac. Our problem, born earthbound, extends outward to the universe. We counted on permanence, then meteors hit. Marriage eclipsed by a fall while caring for children. Concussion of stars, I only blinked black. We were sunspots of life headed towards twilight, but conversations ended. 2 quasars quit. A polite death. A galaxy of unspoken regrets. He was light years gone. What animal comes next in my zodiac? Here, I am a balanced Libra. In China, I am a rat. So the book does have upbeat poems at the end when hope starts to come alive. And I was grown up in India, and had the chance to meet the Dalai Lama when I was 11 years old. And he really touched me for the rest of my life. So the last poem is called Divorce Prayer in Perpetuity Throughout the Universe. Compassion is the radicalism of our time. The Dalai Lama. May joy in this void, without money, possessions, accolades. May everyone have fulfillment, even you, even me. Those who aren't skilled at happiness need it desperately. Don't diminish them. It takes nothing from you. Greet your adversaries with prayers for peace. Then, chances for everyone's delight worldwide are increased 7 billion to 1. Those are very good odds. Thank you, Karen, and the whole Kelsay staff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lois Romadili, and this is my book, Like Water in the Palm of My Hand. I'd like to thank everyone today for coming, and everyone at Kelsay Books for just putting this together, and just a wonderful experience. This first poem, past couple of years, I think we've all experienced a lot of stress. So this poem is for all of us. Poem in which I rescue you. I'm lifting you out of the here and now and opening the door to the other side of how good life is supposed to be. Now, I'm shoving you through, deadbolting lock, jamming lever, throwing away key. Even after all your pounding, sill to sash, your fist begging bloody knocks, I won't let you back in. Then, while you're pushing and grunting, I'll jump kick the peephole, drive my heels into the floor, and after I wedge a chair underneath the knob, I'll slip a note underneath the thinnest crack. This is your new home. Next poem is titled, I Came Here for Some Answers. At the top of the grand staircase in Bryce Canyon, the hoodoos call to one another. These rock waves, crests of limestone, siltstone, dolomite, mudstone, paralyzed by time, patiently resist the dark night sky. I came here for some answers. But if these stone towers and red spires know anything, they're not telling me. I never understood the beauty of destruction. Shiva's third eye of wisdom, those Tibetan monks who destroy sand mandalas to get healed, the millennium of wind, water, and ice having their way with me. The weathering of my life into smaller and smaller pieces until there is nothing but this silence whistling past my ears. And this last poem, Why Moon Jellyfish Won't Speak of Cancer. I suppose I should start more slowly, work up to it, draw you in, tell you a smart story about a wolf limping down a country lane and how the animal is chained to a gray bearded beggar who is toothless, but properly kind, and how they're suddenly overtaken by a wind so powerful it blows them clear across the ocean, where they're trapped forever on an island you never dreamed of, but fear might actually exist. But that won't do. It won't tell you how the words cancer and I have take on a life all their own. This tale won't take you to that elsewhere place where time creates a silky pocket and shoehorns you inside its pouch, or how you'll press your fingertips to the wall of that translucent membrane which divides the just you from the just world. Perhaps if I mouth the words, we are not alone, to the trembling moon jellies glowing in the dark, floating to the surface of an eternal sea garden, their luminescent hearts would sing out to me. There is a language beyond language. Would the sting shock you? Would you believe me then? If I said, I am always afraid now of beginning this kind of story. Thank you.
Thank you to Karen and to Lisa and Julie and everyone at Kelsay for allowing me to be part of this wonderful company of poets. My book is The Infernal Now, with cover by my former student and now friend and writing colleague, Peter Gooch. Ironically, the poem I'm going to read started off with COVID. And I've been boosted till hell won't have it, but I am currently having COVID. You know, life does catch up with you. This poem is entitled Gone. And the epigraph you'll certainly recognize. It is the blight man was born for. It is Margaret you mourn for. Gerard Manley Hopkins, Spring and Fall to a Young Child. Waiting in the car while my wife gets her COVID shot, I listen to Joni sing Carrie Get Out Your Cane, her dulcimer like coins jangling into a tin pot. Then the twanging of Stephen Stills, disguising pain with lyrics and riffs that underpin his throat-catching whimsy in Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. Then Sweet Judy sings My Father to rippling piano and her 12-string Gibson, back in the day of all those desperate flings, back when she and Joni, Stills, Crosby, and Nash were young. Judy's album was Who Knows Where the Time Goes. It's gone, all right, but the decades are nudged aside, and I'm sung back to the tacky apartment where I lived alone on West Main Street, teaching sophomores how not to rhyme, playing my own songs absent my best friend's guitar licks and stand-up bass. Because his new wife left him no time for me, I'd backed off to give them peace. Until at 6 one night, he'd shown up. I took it as long as I could, he said, then moved in. He'd sit till the small hours and play Joni's Blue, while I tossed in bed, hoping his pain would pass, at least enough so we could face the coming day. He took the bedroom another friend who'd lost his spouse had used, That friend, when my earnest efforts came undone, moved to a small, crappy room in a crumbling frame house, where a few months later, he left a note for everyone he knew, including one for his landlady, instructing her to call police before entering. He sat in the bathtub and shot himself to leave no mess. At the funeral, I learned his parents burned all of his notes like refuse. Their anger blew my self-dramatizing guilt apart. My other friend grieved as Joni sang away his blues, and before too long, he married his high school sweetheart. We played our own minor league music in local bars, the whole indulgent catalog, the walking away from lovers playlists, Dylan, Cohen, Joni, and wars, Vietnam, and all the rest, hoping for a new day. We took prank calls. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? Best let him out before he smothers. Or, is John there? What's that? No John there? Do you shit in Dixie cups, man? And one from a married former student with red hair who asked what I'd say if she told me she was nearby, driving in nothing but high heels and a coat. For some strange reason, I rebuffed her offer without a sigh, then hated myself for my unkindness, smug and dumb. And our apartment actually saw 2 or 3 pals crawl off to sleep in the bath. Too many tokes. Another crashed with us long enough to have a key. His snarling shaver woke us, giving rise to grim jokes about Frank Zappa's "Weasels Rip My Flesh." Another time, Nelson Algren was a guest, and after reading something of mine said, "More laughs, otherwise why bother?" We'd met walking out on a Leslie Fiedler meeting, preferring the Billy Goat Tavern and its good cheer. Nelson is gone now with so many others. We wait for our own turn. It may be near the point where we're no fun anymore, but we drive through the parking gate fortified by vaccine, my wife and I, while Joni sings, "Let's not talk of fare thee wells now." And though we may mourn for ourselves, like Margaret, we still love earthly things, still make music, look for the laughs, still glad we were born. Thank you.
Our final speaker is another featured reader. This is Paul Bone. He is the author of Nostalgia for Sacrifice and Present Infinitive. He has published poems in the Hopkins Review, the Birmingham Poetry Review, 32 Poems, the Southern Poetry Review, the Cimarron Review, and other journals. He lives in North Texas. Go Texas! And is co-editor of Measure Press. We're happy to have you, Paul.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and thanks to everybody else. It's been a pleasure hearing all your poems, and of course, thanks to Karen and Delisa and Jenna for doing such a good job with our books. So this is mine, Present Infinitive, and I'm going to start with the title poem. And with all respect to Jeannie's villanelles, when it comes to them, for my own self, I just generally aspire to indifference, but I had a couple of lines running around in my head, and this is what came of it. Present Infinitive. He come up to the house the other day is what we'd say, a persistent present tense of arrivings, never leaving that other day, a slip of usage, less important, say, than slipping fan belts or a fading sense that I come up to the house the other day. A well-greased come along might make me stay, the clicking gears aligning post and fence, arriving, never leaving that other day. On the steps, I scraped my boots free of their clay and clapped them twice together. Here are hints I come up to the house the other day. The door sticks crooked in its frame. In its way, it tells me where, but never quite the when, arriving, never leaving that other day. I checked the shed for tools and their intents, the saw's division and the hammer's dents. I come up to the house the other day, never arriving, leaving that other day. This one, I suppose you could say it's a lesson in object impermanence. Oddly enough, it's essentially a transcription of a dream that I had a couple of days after my stepfather died a few years ago. So this poem is quite a gift, actually. It's called Revenant. The grass was green, the house empty. I thought, no truck in the driveway as I walked up. But then to find my brothers in the kitchen, shocked as I was at the clock alarm going off and his tall, naked form laid out on the bed as if he'd come home from lunch, taken a shower, and fallen asleep. We let him rise then on his own, put on his clothes, and talk to the friend on the job he had to head back to, forms to pull from footings, another bedroom to frame in, some kid always late, and even this did not anger him, just going about it all as if he still had business there, talking patient as before. By the hall mirror, we saw him lace his boots, buckle his belt, and put on his shirt, all the while, whoever it was still on the other end. If he noticed us, he had the grace not to say so, nor turn to look, for we were all stunned to silence, worried our noisome breathing might scare him off too soon. He looked in the mirror a last time, stuck a pencil under his hat band, and walked past us out to the truck that maybe now was here for him, we guessed, though we heard no door. No engine that first warm morning to tell us he was gone, only the aftersound of his voice, as when, from far off, the roofer's hammer sounds the nail, not as it falls, but rises. This one's called "And the Elder Shall Serve the Younger." And I remember now how it nearly happened, my brother's drowning. We'd put on stocking caps and walk stiffly down the road toward the gravel pit in our rubber boots, doubled up socks, and duck brown coveralls, our uniforms of men. A hard freeze after sleet had glazed the mounds of gravel and sand into ziggurats, which held their shapes even as we stood on their crests, now leveled and grooved, where the loader's bucket had drawn back, dragging its teeth to prepare a place of sacrifice. The black boom of a crane loomed over the quarry pond, but it was not out there under the milky green with the catfish, where my brother descended almost to death. Beside each of the mounds was a pit, deep enough to drown in, we couldn't say, the water in them so brown and thick it was more a medium for mud than anything. He'd made it to the middle of one before the ice gave way and he dropped to his armpits, 8 years old and sinking. All I could do was punch my way to him, breaking the crust and muscling through the slurry to bring him back with me to the shore. Both of us effigies about to become icons in our suits of muck, already hardening around our bodies. Back home, we laid it all outside the door, and when it had frozen solid, leaned ourselves against the house to think about the life we missed, the one our mother glimpsed later when the sweep of her headlights revealed the empty coveralls standing on their own. This next one's called Daughter, and it's, I don't know if it needs to be said, it's not strictly it's not autobiographical at all. I suppose it's something kind of an anticipatory fear you feel about your children. It's called Daughter. I glimpsed your purple backpack in the woods, looked back, and it was just the autumn leaves flickering like fish. The pinkish hood you took your angry shelter in, the sleeves you pulled up to the elbow, even in cold, all gone. Only the shadow of the you that said I gave you up. By now I was old and had forgotten how it happened. Clues came and went like the seasons, more like flashes of you, a curve of brown hair through windshield, pile of bright bedtime books reduced to ashes, your green voice from the corner of a field. Whatever happened happens every day. I haven't checked the churchyard yet. I may. I'll just do one more. This was kind of, it's hard to write poems about tragedies. They tend not to be so great and not to do much of a service to the tragedy. But there was a shooting in Texas a few years ago and in a church. And so I just tried to write a little ballad about it. So it's called Even Here. The rifle, the truck, the church, the pew, the pastor, the hymn, the prayer, the tenor and alto, soprano and bass, the dresses, the cloth to bear. The Savior and grace, the wounds, the blood, the bones, the boards, the splinters, the major chords, yet the minor key through which the bullet enters. The altar call, the empty shells, the sheep on his good right hand, the least of these, the not yet born, the haircuts, the wedding bands. The thoughts, the prayers, the shrug, the wish, the Lord and his setting sun, the bigger graves and the smaller ones, the guns, the guns, the guns. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm just so grateful that everybody was able to show up, and I loved hearing all your voices. Thank you so much for being a part of our program here, and thanks for our team putting everything together. It's been really delightful, and I hope you guys have a happy holiday. If you want to, if you've never been a part of a program, we are open now for the June program. You can send us a recording of yourself, and we'll try to fit you in the next one. And that's about it. If you want to hang around and chat, that's fine, or you can just go now. We're done.
Thanks. Happy
Thank you,
holidays.
Karen.